By the time we get to 12 years of age, finishing primary school, the ability for that non-linear thinking has already gone down to about 60%. Then what happens? We go to high school. And I think Ukraine is very similar to Australia or the US or the UK. Which are the most highly respected subjects at high school in Ukraine? Mathematics, sciences, physics. These are the hierarchy, the top hierarchy. Which are the least respected subjects? Anything involving your body. Dance, painting, art, because that's not an intellectual pursuit. So what happens is that by the age of 18, our ability for this non-linear thinking has gone down to less than 15%. Then what happens? We study engineering. Or you go into a higher degree, particularly technical higher degrees. And what the literature shows is that by the age of 25, in a given population like this, there are only 2% of creative thinkers left. This ability to think in a non-linear. So what does this little exercise test? It tests your ability to think in a non-linear way. So if in this exercise, you did something like that, you see the results. Not too bad. But if you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or you just did one single line, or you just colored all the circles in, very linear thinking. If, on the other hand, we did something like this is non-linear thinking. I gave this exercise to my daughter when she was 7. Congratulations! Wonderful. I gave this exercise to my daughter when she was 7, and it shows the mind of a 7-year-old, because you see, it's all different. She still has it. So, here's the first thing I learned, is that when it comes to creativity, we actually have to do something quite profound. Now, I know this is going to shock you, but if you want to become a child again, if you want to become more creative again, you have to think. Now, what do I mean by think? When I said to you folks, please do this exercise, about 80% of you just acted. About 20% of you did something unusual. What did you do? You said, what do you mean by fill out the circle? That's the first step of creative thinking. Some of you turn to the person next to you and say, what do you think he means? That's creative thinking. It's not automatic. So look, this is not, I know this seems simple, but one of the problems is we are, through our education experience, trained not to think. We're trained to jump into formula, into linear patterns. So the first step of becoming more creative is to engage in something we call metacognition. You have to be able to think about the way you are thinking. Now let me give you an example of that, because it's not easy. This is a photo of a gentleman called Doug Deeds, and he works for a company called GE, and this is he's working in the MRI scanning business, which is in the healthcare business. And I saw him give a talk at a conference in Berlin about 1 year ago. And as I listened to him to talk about his business, even though he was an engineer, I said, wow, this guy's creative. Because as he talked, what I heard him talking about were what I'd read about in the literature. He was saying, in my business, to innovate, you have to ask questions. You have to ask, what is the problem? And then what you have to do is have liquidity. Now, what does liquidity mean? And I saw this in your example. You did lots of different pictures. That's liquidity. The ability to think in lots of different ideas. The next step is flexibility. So when I looked at your picture, you went from a star to a wheel as a flower. Maybe art is not the best class at school. But you know, it's okay. So what we see in her picture was she went from one idea to that's flexibility in thinking also. My daughter went from a football to a bicycle to a place. Flexible. I'll explain what I mean about this as we go on. But let me tell you why I was astounded by this guy, because this was the business he was in. Now, it's a bit hard to see, but this is an MRI scanner. It's in hospitals, and if the doctors think you have a tumor, they put you through this machine. Now, Imagine if you are a 5-year-old child and a doctor walks you into a hospital room with a machine like that. What's going to happen? I'll come to that. You're thinking about it. What happens with a 5-year-old child is they become terrified. And of course, if a child becomes terrified, there's a problem because they're moving, and in this machine you have to lie very still. What is the engineering solution to a wiggling child in a machine? What's the engineering solution? Straps. You tie the children to the bed. Now, if any of you have small children, even if you tie the child to the bed, which I don't advise, they're not going to stay still. They'll still move. So it's still a problem. What's the medical solution to a wiggling child? Anesthesia. So in 98% of hospitals around the world, children are anesthetized to go into this machine. Very expensive and dangerous. Now what Doug Dees was talking about is that this has been a problem in hospitals for more than 25 years. They come up with restraints, they come up with anesthesia, but what he said was, they were not thinking. What's the solution to this problem, folks? What's the real problem? What's the real problem? The child is scared. It's fear. So here, what you're doing is you're not trying to solve an engineering or a medical problem. You're solving a psychological problem. And his response to that was this. They turned the scanner into a pirate ship. Because all children love a pirate ship. And then they built the whole experience around the pirate ship, which was about a video and an experience. And I saw him show a video of a little girl working this machine. She was 5 years old. She lay very still on the bed because she was told that there were pirates asleep in the machine. And that as she went through the machine, she had to remain perfectly still or the pirates would wake up. And do you know what she said when she came up the other side of the machine? Can I do it again? You see, this is medical. This is thinking about the way you're thinking. It's really asking, what is the problem? And so many times when I go into companies, I hear people say, it can't be done. That's what Doug Dees was here. You should not ask. You should not spend your time wasting on why it can't be done. What should you do? You should focus on how else can it be done. That's creativity. It's thinking. Okay. Let me show you another example of how you become more creative. Please turn over your paper. And in a moment, what I would like you to do is draw a cake. Not yet. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Now, by the way, I gave this exercise to my 9-year-old daughter and her friends. They did a very good job. No pressure. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a cake, and then you're going to cut it 4 times. And your objective is to come up with the maximum number of pieces of cake. Draw the cake, cut it 4 times, maximum number. Your time starts now. Go. 30 seconds. Please draw. Seconds. Four cups. 4 cups. 2 more cups. 10 seconds. Okay, please stop. Can you please show your cakes to the people next to you and laugh? Oh my goodness. Oh, interesting. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Please raise your hands. Raise your hands if you did a cake that looked like that. You see what's happening? All that education. What about about if you did a cake like this? Ooh. Also very bad. Don't feel bad. It's not your fault. 10 years ago, I also used to draw cakes like this. Before I started to think. Don't feel bad. We can change it. Alright, what about if you did a cake like this one? Ooh. You're very proud. Don't be so proud. Still pretty bad. Okay, what about if you did a cake like this one? Ooh. Still pretty bad. It's okay, it's a bit better. And some of you might be asking, what is he talking about? Here's the thing I'm talking about. This exercise reveals another reason we have real problems with being creative. It's called assumptions. To be creative, you have to question your assumption. Now, what are assumptions? Assumptions are when we don't think. We just think this is the way the world is, this is the way the world should be, and we are content. We don't think. So what I want you to do now is turn to the person next to you and tell them, what assumptions did you make in doing this exercise? Now, let me give you an example. These people all made the assumption that the cake is round. That's one assumption. But what other assumptions did you make? Please talk with each other. Give me 1 minute, talk with each other. What assumptions did you make? Communism is dead. You know, this is socialism. Everyone should get the same size piece. You know? When I do this exercise in America, they don't do it like that. You know? So, yeah, that's another assumption. What other assumptions were made? You made assumptions about the scale of the cake. You did it on the paper, not in your mind. If you did it in your mind, maybe the cake is the size of the planet. And if the cake is the size of the planet, and the lines are not straight, they're one continuous line, you're doing it around. So this could be, do you understand? If that's one line, how many pieces do you come up with? The answer to this exercise, and by the way, is very simple. The answer is infinite. Because if the cake is the size of a planet, and the knife has 1,000 blades, not one. You also made a lot of assumptions about the knife. The answer is infinite. And this is also the problem in business, because often in business we think too rationally. We think within boundaries and we can't let our minds free. Now, by the way, when I did this exercise to my 9-year-old daughter and her friends, their answer, infinite. My daughter said, Papa, we can't tell you how many because it's so many. Because they need the planets, they need the curve. You understand? This is what's happening. More importantly, can you go back to that? Now, I saw some people in the back there who were not talking to each other. He's not so bad. Talk to him. So what I want you to do is now explain to the person next to you, why did you make these assumptions? We can understand we made all these assumptions, but why did you make them? 1 minute discussion. Why did you make these assumptions? Talk to each other. probably did it that way because that's how your mum cut the cake. Right? This is experience. And I have children. You know, can you imagine if I cut the cake, like that one, and my 7-year-old son Charlie got that piece, there would be chaos. So you learn, right? So one of the reasons you make these assumptions is because of your experience. As a child, observing people. Now, experience is not just at home, it's also in the workplace. Yeah? Society, people around you. And often in a company you say to people, why did we do it this way? And what is the answer? Because we've always done it this way. That's experience. Now, why would some of you have done things like that? Because maybe you studied at school pie charts. You know, you're making charts. So this is school again. So it's not just experience, it's also education. Why else did you make these assumptions? Why else did you make these assumptions? Aha! Because you know, when I do this in Germany, it's wonderful. Has anyone worked in Germany? The Germans are very regional, isn't it? So when you do this, the German guys go, yeah, and then I did this exercise in Germany, in Munich, in a technology company, and this German guy said, you made me do it. I said, no. He said, yes, it's you. You were tricking us. And then all these engineers started to get very angry at me. The German guy is very serious. I said, look, it's just a game. Relax. No, we will not relax. This is serious. I said, it's not serious. Yes, it's very good. You made me look foolish. Ooh. So this is another thing. That sometimes if senior people or authority figures do things in a particular way, we copy them. We follow them. Be very careful of that. And I'll talk more about that as we go on. Okay, are you ready? So what I'm talking about here is something very important. It's about how we learn. Analytic learning is very important. We need to learn formula and processes and so that's very important. The problem is that most of our experience in education is 90% that. We're told to be analytical. What we're not told to do is this stuff, man. Creative thinking. And in my view, in today's world, teaching people to think creatively is just as important as science or mathematics, but we don't teach it in school. In fact, we do the opposite. We teach people to think in linear ways. It doesn't work anymore. That way of thinking was designed for factories. The old industrial age. We're not in an industrial age, we're in a knowledge age. So what we have to start doing is teaching ourselves again and teaching our children that that's also important. And the last one is this one. It's practical. You see? Because also the thing is, we do too much inside our heads. And that's why when I do these exercises, it's difficult. Because you can't practice. If you had Play-Doh or if you had some instruments, you come out with very different results. But you're not doing this it's just on paper, or it's inside your head. Now, what I'm talking about here is this, is that it's not your fault. Don't feel bad about these results. It's completely possible to change it, but what you have to accept is that your education and your experience leads you into not being creative, and you have to try to be creative. And only you can take that step. So let's take that step, shall we? Here's your next exercise. Are you ready? Yes? This is the best exercise I ever came up with because it's so shocking. Oh, did somebody play out? Sorry, that's okay. Alright, okay. Here's the exercise. You ready? Please draw the person sitting next to you. Now, this is not a trick. I want you to do a very accurate, artistic drawing of the person next to you. Not abstract, realistic. It can be the person on either side, it doesn't matter. You have 2 minutes to draw a picture. Let's go. Go. 2 minutes. Oh. Alright, can you now please show your picture to the person? Show them the picture. Show the picture. Did you do me? Oh my goodness. Are you okay? Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Now I can tell, can I just give someone, I have been in Ukraine now for 2 hours. And I've learned something. They don't teach very much art at school in Ukraine. I can see it. Okay. Okay, everybody, okay. Now, Irina, when I asked this question, when I said draw the person next to you, how did you feel? How did you feel? You can do it, but you didn't. But I heard, did you say it's scared? Yes, scared. Raise your hand when Jamie said, please draw the person next to you, you felt a bit scared. You're afraid. Oh, no. It's interesting, isn't it? And let me tell you why. About 3 months ago, I was invited by Accenture, big global consulting firm, to present at the European Financial Services Innovation Awards. And I stood up already in front of 400 European bankers, very senior guys. And I asked them to draw a cake. I asked these bankers to draw each other. Do you know what the reaction was? They looked at me like this. I said, come on guys, go for it. More than 2/3 of them refused. They said, no. I said, come on, it's just fun. And then they did this. So I was, like I was running around saying, come on, please draw, please draw. And then there was this very big French guy, very French, expensive glasses, big guy. And I went to him and I could see his name there. I said, Pierre, come on, please draw this guy. And do you know what he did? He looked at me and he went, fuck off. I'm so he said, really looking at me angry. That was not the only reaction. I had at least half a dozen reactions like that. Get away from me, no. What? Why? Because these are very smart people, aren't they? Why were they afraid? The reason they were afraid is because they have what we call an ego. They're big guys, and they're afraid to say, I don't know how. It's a little bit easy, isn't it? And you know what I've learned? Creative people, they know that sometimes you have to be wrong to learn. And if you're in an organization where the people at the top always want to look proud, always want others to think that they know everything, you never get creativity. Because creativity is not hierarchical. Just because someone's at the top of the organization does not mean they have the best ideas. Because sometimes they're too far from the customer. Sometimes they're too far from the market. So fear is something. And do you know what else happened in that session? I went to another guy, a young guy, maybe he was like 28, 27. I said, please draw. He said, no. I said, please draw. He said, no. And then he went like this. So I knelt down, and do you know what he whispered in my ear? He's my boss. There might be consequences. You see? So not only it's ego, it's the fear of ego. So if you're in an organization where junior people are afraid of senior people, if junior people are afraid to challenge senior people, you don't get creativity. This is clear. So here's the thing. The second thing is that creative people ask questions. When you're facing, now you should not go around every day questioning everything. But when you're stuck, when you don't know how, if what you're doing is not working, you have to question your kids. And what you have to do is you have to question your learning, you have to question your experience, and sometimes you have to question the boss. And if you're in a culture where you can't question the boss, it's not going to happen. That's a cultural nature. Okay, so how do you respond to that? The first thing is you have to be inspired to be creative. This is why entrepreneurs are often creative people, because they want to be creative. And if you are not questioning, if you don't have a questioning attitude about the world around you, you're not going to be creative. So what did I do when I sat on the plane today? What did I do? I was flying 3 hours from Brussels to Kiev. What's the first thing I did when I sat down next to the person on the plane? I turned to her and said, so, why are you going to Kiev? And then we started talking with each other. And do you know what I did? I asked her questions. Because it's my first time to Ukraine. So the poor girl, I spent 3 hours asking her questions about what's education like in Ukraine. How old are people when they get married? Can you challenge the boss in companies in Ukraine? I asked her questions. That's inspiration to learn things. And then there's this thing called intuition. When you do that circle, when you do that cake, if you're not satisfied with it, do another one. So what you have to do is learn to listen to your gut. If it doesn't feel right, listen. Artists will do that. Artists will take 6 months sometimes on a single line because they're not satisfied with it. They question it and challenge it. And then the last thing, of course, is imagination. Now, there's something else here. Here's what I'd like you to do. Think for a moment. What are you doing when you're at your most creative? So think about your typical day. What are you actually doing when you have your most brilliant creative thoughts? And I want you to tell the person next to you. Let's go. Tell the person next to you. When are you at your most creative? Let's go. Okay, folks? Would someone like to offer some ideas? When you were the most creative, raise your hand if you said sports. Doing some sports, running, jogging. Did someone talk about sports? Yes. So this is what I do when I'm not teaching and doing research. I'm cycling. And I get some of my best creative thoughts when I'm out on my bicycle. And I used to think that that was because I had some time to myself. Raise your hand if some of you here said, I have my best creative thoughts driving in the car, or having a shower, or before I go to bed at night. You see? This is something a little bit similar, because what you're doing is giving yourself an environment in time. I met a guy a few weeks ago and he said, I have my best creative thoughts. He's a very busy person. He said, I have my best creative thoughts on the toilet. And you know what he said? I'm actually thinking about putting a toilet in my office. To just sit there, from time to time. I said, why stop there? Maybe you should get a whole team toilet. Like 10 toilets, in the meeting room. Everyone sits on there. Okay? But there's a reason. moment in time. Now, there's another reason, however. Let me tell you this, because when I started studying creativity, I realized that my cycling was not just about time. I read up on a chemical called dopamine. Now, why is this important? Because when you do exercise, intensive exercise, you get a boost of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine helps you to fire neurons between your left and right hemispheres. So that's why when you do sports, you go for a vigorous walk in the forest, you take your dog, you ride your horse, you have creative thoughts. Because it's chemical. So this is something which in many organizations we don't respect, because actually in many organizations, the people who go for a jog at lunchtime, they're not the hard workers. The people who leave the office at 6 o'clock to do some sports, they're not serious about their job. They're the best people. Because they're thinking and they're encouraging themselves to think. Now there's something else here, because it's dopamine can come from sport. How else do you boost dopamine? I come from Belgium. Chocolate. Wonderful. So what you need to do is the middle of the afternoon, you have a low dopamine. You have a nice coffee, and you have a little bit of dark chocolate. And this will boost up your dopamine levels. It's good for creative thinking. Now what else boosts your dopamine levels? The old boom boom. Sex! Yes! Yes! So having sex, having lots of sex, boosts your creativity. So, but there's a problem. There's a problem right now, because what happens to most guys after this? I guess in Ukraine it's the same as everywhere, right? After this, most guys. So you need to be waiting with your notepad. So, what are you thinking about? This is very important. Now, there's another thing, because it's not just this. Because also, when you have sex, or in fact, there's some debate. There is another chemical which is called oxytocin. Now, when a woman gives birth to a child, she gets an oxytocin boost. Why? Because oxytocin is the bonding chemical. It makes you feel attachment and love for others. Now, something else I can see here. There can be guys who you work with who are not nice people. Assholes. But suddenly they become a father, and for about 3 months they're a nice guy. Oxytocin. It's the same. But why else is oxytocin important? Because if you want people to be creative, they have to listen to each other. And if you're in an environment where people like each other, they give to each other, then you get creativity because people are more collective. There's more collaboration. So, what you can also do is try to boost oxytocin with innovation teams. And do you know how you do that? It's very simple. You need to hug people. You need to. Can you stand up for a second? Can you stand up? So what you need to do, now I've studied this is scientific, you need to do this. You see? Now, what you actually have to do to get the optimal level of oxytocin is you need to hug 7 people per day. Write that down, 7 people per day. Now, if you can't hug 7 people, dogs are also okay. Okay? You can do that. So here's my last message, okay? So if you want to become more creative people, if you want to change, and you can, the first thing is think, the second thing is question, and the third thing is hug or have a lot of sex. So all you need to do now is go out and practice this. Good luck and thank you very much.
Спасибо большое. Я думаю, что все получили удовольствие от сегодняшней лекции. Я только могу сказать еще раз большое спасибо. Для
A couple of people asked about my book. It's currently available at a very deep discount on Amazon. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, I would say